This one is good. I'll borrow this. And what is it? I mean, she's been beaten up. Some crime has happened. Okay, and you say that they are privately have gone to someone and decided between themselves that that person is going to mediate between them. So when is the line going to be drawn and start banning?
No, I think one has to be very careful. Women, at least in my experience, women have always gone to community elders, influential family members, or religious leaders, if they felt like wanting their issues resolved by them. One can't ban that. That is for them to do. One can highlight the discriminatory nature of the advice that's given by many of those institutions, which we have always sought to do. So community mechanisms are not democratic. They are not, they are profoundly discriminatory, not just against women, but against, they're often homophobic and everything else. So one aspect of our struggles is, of course, within our communities, trying to challenge those anti-democratic, misogynistic, homophobic, whatever institutions and the promotion of those kinds of values. That one has to do that through education, through awareness, through making women in this instance more aware of their legal rights. Where we start banning, or where we start particularly in relation to addressing the state, is where the state legitimizes those mechanisms and accommodates those mechanisms within the wider legal framework. And that's when we have to say that the legal system in this country has no business legitimizing religious laws which are profoundly discriminatory and unequal. And I'm not just talking about Sharia, I'm talking about all religious laws. They are profoundly, they don't see women's fundamental human rights as a value. So how the state's legal system can start accommodating that becomes a problem. So if a woman goes to a tribunal as opposed to her religious elders, then the fact that the decision that is made at that tribunal can be endorsed by a court of this country becomes problematic, because a court is not going to look behind that decision where it's voluntarily agreed and where the woman has agreed to be bound by it. And of course we would argue that in most cases if women don't know their rights, if in most cases women are going to be made to feel guilty or told that they are dissenters if they challenge religious authority, and if women are coerced in all sorts of ways to using that particular channel, then you know it's not really an exercise of free choice. But courts won't look into that. What they will look at is, did she voluntarily agree to be bound by the outcome? And if she voluntarily agreed to be bound by the outcome, then that agreement holds. And so that's where we have to say to the state that we don't want the state to be accommodating in order to appease religious leaders or to create a moderate leadership. They may be moderate in relation to not wanting to plant bombs on the streets of the country, but they are not moderate in relation to women's issues. And that we have to accept. And so when the Archbishop of Canterbury or the Lord Chief Justice starts saying, well, maybe Sharia, the tribunals are fine, and maybe, you know, some form of Sharia in relation to the family should be accommodated, that becomes problematic. If women on their own choose to see a religious leader, one can't ban that, although one can highlight the problems and use the fact that these community mechanisms are discriminatory to show what would be replicated in religious tribunals. But it's the religious tribunals and the fact that the state seems to be absorbing at a rate unprecedented religious values. We are now recast as religious communities when once we were ethnic communities. That in itself is a problem, and it entrenches religious authoritarian religious leaders who are extremely right-wing. But I have to say, part of the wider problem is precisely what somebody alluded to when they said that there is this fighting extremism. I think we are all, in terms of how social relations are being constructed and how minorities are being addressed, is all colored by the fact that the state's agenda is fighting extremism and creating a moderate leadership. But what the state and that so-called moderate leadership are doing is using women as chips, as barters, in order to carve out agendas and spaces of power.
Right. Thank you very much.